Hey guys, tonight we drift back to a time when silence wasn't just encouraged. It was enforced by holy decree. You're wandering through a fog-draped glen in northern Europe, soft moss underfoot, the moon hanging like a scoop of cream in the cold sky. Somewhere ahead, just past the ivy-covered archway, stands an abbey so old it doesn't creak, it exhales. You slip through the gates and suddenly the air changes. It's thicker here, stiller, a little holier, a little spookier. Welcome to the place where women once gave up everything for prayer discipline, and apparently spoons. Yes, spoons. If that makes you chuckle, go ahead. Just do it quietly. This is a place of contemplation and the walls are very good at echoing. Tonight we're going to unpack one of the oddest historical puzzles you didn't know your dreams were missing. Why some medieval nuns were buried with spoons. You probably won't survive this if you're looking for action-packed sword fights. But if the idea of candlelit soup rituals and divinely inspired cutlery sends you drifting, you're exactly where you need to be. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Drop a comment with your location and local time. I love seeing where in the world you're winding down. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You arrive just before Matins, the first prayer of the day, which is confusing since it happens long before sunrise. The stone walkway glistens with dew. You shuffle past a very stern goose with opinions and step into the side courtyard. Everything here smells like beeswax porridge and rain-soaked linen. Inside the abbey, the nuns move like sleepwalkers in wool. They've been up since long before you arrived, and they'll be up long after you've gone back to the cozy modern world of cotton sheets and central heating. One of them glances your way, then returns to polishing something. Was that a spoon? Daily life here is tightly wound. Not just in a strict schedule way, but in a literal sense. Robes are bound with braided cords. Curtains are drawn tight and speech is kept to tightly rationed murmurs. This is a Benedictine convent ruled by a rule capital R, and even the spoons follow it. Sister Magdalene is currently setting the long wooden table for the morning meal. Each bowl is identical. Each spoon is placed with reverence handle facing east. No one speaks. If your stomach growls, they'll pretend not to hear it, but they will all hear it. Acoustics in stone cloisters are unforgiving. Now, here's your first mainstream historical fact of the night. Most medieval nuns weren't forced into convents. Contrary to popular belief, many joined willingly for education status or spiritual purpose. Noble families often saw nunneries as an honorable and budget-conscious path for surplus daughters. But here's the quirky twist: personal items weren't banned outright. Each nun could own a few things, often marked with her initials or a tiny engraving. Spoons, personal spoons, were one of the most treasured of these. And not just for soup. Some doubled as bookmarks. Some had holy inscriptions. One legend says had a carved warning, "Thou shalt not stir idly." You trail behind Sister Agnes as she heads to the larder. It's not a grand pantry of abundance. It's mostly roots, herbs, and a small barrel of something gray. You try not to ask. As she stoops, you notice she has a little pouch tied at her waist. It jingles slightly. Inside, a spoon, polished smooth from decades of use. You're starting to get the idea. Historians still argue whether the spoon's importance was practical, symbolic, or somewhere in between. Some point to liturgical rituals that required communal tools. Others suggest the spoon's presence in burials was tied to the Eucharist. A holy meal, after all, deserves its own cutlery. One theory leans further into the metaphor, spoons as emblems of humility. You serve others. You feed without waste. You don't stab with forks or hoard with knives, just gentle scooping. Honestly, it's the introvert of utensils. But back to your walk. You pass through a narrow hallway where the walls are covered in thin parchment scrolls, rules, hymns, and a rather intense drawing of a spoon with what appears to be wings. You decide not to ask. In the scriptorium, Sister Beatrice copies a psalm by candlelight tongue, poking slightly from the corner of her mouth. Her ink pot is balanced next to what else is a spoon, not dipped in ink, mind you, just there, comforting, familiar. The Abbey cat is asleep under the table. He dreams of milk, or mice, or maybe spoons. No one knows his name. You're starting to suspect it's Spoon. Later, as evening settles in, you follow the sisters to chapel. They file in robed and quiet, each carrying a small item. A few have crosses. One has a dried sprig of lavender. Sister Scholastica. She clutches her spoon like a rosary. It's not made of silver, it's pewter, slightly bent, worn thin at the edges. But in her hand it gleams like relic gold. You imagine her bearing it in a future garden where it'll sprout soup-bearing trees. Or maybe she simply wants to take a piece of comfort with her to eternity. The bells toll. The wind nudges the heavy chapel doors. You settle into the shadows near the back and realize this place, its quiet rituals, its worn stone, its strange devotion to a humble object is already working on your heartbeat. Slower now, softer, steady as a spoon against wood. You're up before dawn again, but this time you're ready for it. Sort of. Your feet shuffle along the stone path with slightly more confidence, if not warmth. The Abbey isn't built for comfort. There's no velvet here, no fluffy blankets, just wool wax and the comforting predictability of the rule. Today you're joining the sisters in the refectory, the dining hall, where silence is golden and spoons reign supreme. You take a seat at the far end of the long table next to a carved wooden post that smells faintly of old cabbage and lemon balm. It's not exactly luxury dining, but it is consistent. And if medieval nuns loved anything more than God, it was probably routine. The meal arrives on a wooden tray carried by Sister Gertrude with the focus of someone transporting relics, not soup. She places a bowl before you, followed by, yes, it's happening again, a spoon. It's wrapped in a cloth napkin embroidered with a single word: frugality. You glance sideways at Sister Gertrude, but she's already moved on, reverently placing each utensil like it's a sacrament. Here's a mainstream historical fact to ladle into your mental soup. During the Middle Ages, spoons were deeply personal objects. You didn't just grab one from a communal drawer, you brought your own. You kept it clean. You knew its shape like you knew your own handwriting. Nobles had silver ones, monks had horn, nuns, pewter bone, sometimes even wood. But in some convents, those humble spoons were elevated far beyond practicality. They were status symbols, not in the worldly sense, but within the microcosm of monastic life. A well-used spoon spoke of decades of devotion. It had probably stirred hundreds of bowls of pottage, each one eaten in near silence. You're chewing something vaguely lentil-based, and while the flavor is restrained, the texture is comfortingly warm. You glance down at your spoon and realize you've started cradling it between bites like a child holding a favorite toy. This place is doing things to your modern sensibilities. Sister Hilda across the table smiles softly, then returns to her bowl. Her spoon is different, slightly curved at the tip, almost like a ladle. You wonder if she filed it that way herself or if it was passed down. Spoons could be heirlooms after all. In wealthier convents, some were engraved with the names of long-dead sisters, a quiet lineage of women who had stirred, served, and spooned their way through decades of discipline. Quirky tidbit. Alert, there's one preserved spoon found in an English convent grave with a tiny carved lamb at the base of the handle. Scholars can't agree whether it symbolized Christ, a personal pet, or just a love of stew. Either way, it's adorable. Now historians still argue whether these spoons served purely domestic purposes or had deeper sacred roles. Some records hint at spoons used in symbolic gestures during feast days, like spoon blessings, where a nun would serve others first as a sign of humility. Others suggest they played a role in rituals around death, washing the hands of the deceased perhaps, or even placing the spoon in their hand as they were laid to rest. You watch as Sister Anna gently polishes her spoon with a square of linen before tucking it into her sleeve. Yes, sleeve. Spoons were often stored in wide cuffs or small belt pouches called almoners, alongside herbs' rosary beads, or the occasional emergency plum. The post-meal cleanup is brisk and efficient. There are no dishwashers here unless you count the human kind. You're ushered into the scullery where 3 nuns scrub bowls in near silence except for the occasional splash and the low murmur of a psalm hummed under breath. You roll up your sleeves and join in your spoon, clinking gently against the others in the rinse basin. You're not the only one to drop yours. Sister Euphrosyne retrieves it for you with a small nod and a whispered, "Careful." Her own spoon is wrapped in a leather case which she opens only when needed. It's old, maybe even antique, by convent standards, with a faint inscription in Latin running along the handle. You can't read it in the dim light, but you'd guess it says something like "Feed with love." Or maybe "Please don't drop me again." Outside the scullery, the garden calls. It's not a lavish cloister, but a tidy, practical mix of herbs, cabbages, and medicinal weeds. Nuns were skilled herbalists, you know. Lavender for calm, feverfew for headaches, mugwort for dreams, and always mint. Not for tea, but to rub on cutlery. It gave spoons a faintly fresh aroma that's oddly reassuring. As you wander the garden paths, you notice a small stone bench worn smooth from centuries of use. On it sits a single spoon placed like an offering. No one's watching, but you get the sense it's not meant to be taken. It's a memorial, perhaps, a sister who stirred her last pot and now rests beneath the mint. You move on quietly, your own spoon now tucked into your belt because, let's be honest, you're getting attached. It's starting to feel like a travel companion. A time machine. A very low-tech concave passport to another world. As twilight creeps over the garden, the sisters file past you into the chapel again. One pauses, Sister Cecilia, you think, and gently tugs at your sleeve. She hands you a folded scrap of parchment with a sketch on it. It's a spoon. Of course it is, but this one has wings. You raise your eyebrow and she only smiles and disappears into the flickering candlelight. Was it a joke? A message? A hint at something more symbolic. The abbey doors creak shut, and the stars emerge above the tiled roof, silent as spoons in prayer. Somewhere far off, an owl hoots. You lean against the cool stone wall and exhale. So far, you've seen a world shaped by rules, prayer, and careful scooping. But there's more to this story, much more. Spoons may have started in the kitchen, but some ended in graves. Why? That's tomorrow's mystery. The moon is high now, casting a cold silver sheen over the abbey rooftops as you slip into the scriptorium, quiet as ever, but never empty. The nuns take turns here copying texts and illuminating pages, even by candlelight, if need be. You trail a fingertip along the edge of a lectern, the wood etched with centuries of ink blotches and gentle wear. And then there it is again, nestled beside an open psalter half covered in parchment, a spoon. It's not an ordinary one either. The handle is gently twisted like a corkscrew, and the bowl is shallow, more ceremonial than practical. You lift it carefully, and on the underside is etched a tiny symbol, 2 interlocking keys. A convent seal, a personal sigil, or just a doodle gone devotional. Historians still argue whether spoons like this were used purely for meals or served hidden symbolic roles in the convent economy. Some sources point to spoons doubling as tally counters. Literally, notches were carved to record prayer quotas like a divine punch card. Others claim nuns traded small services, mending a habit, copying a page for spoon tokens, making them a kind of holy currency. You sit down at the edge of the long desk where 2 sisters are quietly illuminating the margins of a psalter. One is painting an iridescent snail chasing a monk, the other is decorating a spoon. Not a real one, just an illustration. But this spoon has wings too. And flames. What is it with these airborne utensils? You whisper your question and Sister Agnes raises an eyebrow. She doesn't answer but slides a worn page across the table to you. It's from an old French manuscript. The Latin reads, Lingua Dei est cochlear. The tongue of God is a spoon. Probably metaphorical, hopefully. You glance over at her in the flickering light. So, this spoon flies you mouth. She shrugs, sometimes. There's no sarcasm in her tone. She means it. And so you dig deeper. Figuratively, but also literally because the next day you're in the archives. Down a spiral staircase that smells like parchment and candle soot, you find the Abbey's oldest inventory records. Many are fragile, but one thick ledger lists the personal effects buried with each sister. And that's when you see it. A recurring note. Cochlear inclusum, spoon enclosed. Over and over again in script growing more cramped with the years. Some entries even list the materials bone, horn, pewter, clay. Occasionally one reads argentium silver, usually followed by the note gift of benefactrix. A donor, perhaps, or a noblewoman who joined the order late in life and brought her silverware along for the ride. You sit back, rubbing your eyes. The candle guttering beside you sends flickers dancing across the page. You wonder what it meant to be buried with a spoon. Not just practically, though. Sure, the afterlife might require soup, but symbolically. Was it a tool of devotion? A badge of service. Quirky tidbit time in one odd 13th century record from a Spanish convent. A nun requested not one, but 7 spoons be buried with her. Why? To feed the mouths of angels, the record says. Scholars still argue whether this was metaphor madness or a deep commitment to heavenly hospitality. Back above ground, you follow the sisters to a low chapel at the far edge of the garden wall. It's not used for services anymore, just storage. But beneath the dust and linen-covered pews lies a single stone slab. No name, just a carving, a spoon flanked by lilies. You kneel beside it, tracing the groove in the stone. No cross, no text, just the symbol. It's oddly moving in a way that catches you off guard. Whoever she was, her spoon spoke for her. Back at the dormitory, Sister Camilla finds you staring out the window, your spoon resting in your lap like an old friend. You're starting to get it, she says quietly. You nod. Maybe. Or maybe I'm just sleepy. She smiles, then hands you a folded square of linen. Inside it, a spoon. Yours now, she says. Officially. It has a tiny bell engraved on the bowl. You run your thumb over the cool metal and wonder if it's symbolic of silence of bells that never ring, or just someone's idea of a practical joke from 400 years ago. Historians debate whether these engravings were mass-produced by traveling artisans or made in-house by particularly crafty nuns. One theory suggests some convents had spoon guilds, groups of sisters who specialized in shaping, decorating, or even assigning spoons based on personality. You'd probably get the sarcastic one. As the bells toll for compline the night prayer, you follow the procession back into the main chapel. The atmosphere is heavy with candle smoke and reverence. The sisters chant slowly, their voices weaving through the incense-laced air like ribbon through lace. And as the final amen fades, each nun quietly retrieves her spoon from her sleeve or pouch and places it back in a wooden box near the altar. A gesture simple and strange, like tucking in a tool or saying goodnight to a friend. You hesitate, then place yours in the box too. Tomorrow, perhaps you'll learn more about the rituals, the reasons, the strange little traditions lost between the lines of history. But for now, you file silently out into the starlight, the scent of mint and wax clinging to your sleeves and the faintest smile playing at your lips. After all, it's not every day you find yourself in a centuries-old spoon cult. Morning creeps in with a pale gold yawn, stretching across the cloisters and warming the dew-slick stone beneath your bare feet. You're following the rustle of habits and the scent of barley porridge as the nuns gather for breakfast in the refectory. No chatter, just the clink of bowls and yes spoons. But here's the twist, each spoon is different. Sister Beatrice's has a hole in the middle. Sister Magdalena's curves like a ladle. Sister Junia's is wooden and worn smooth as if passed down for generations. You're handed a ceramic bowl and pointed toward the porridge pot. A nun, possibly ancient, squints at you before silently placing a spoon in your palm. Yours now, again. This one has a spiral at the end of the handle and feels heavier than it looks. A few bites in, you notice something odd. Everyone is eating at the exact same pace. The same number of scoops, the same pause between each mouthful. It's like clockwork, or choreography. You're not entirely sure that this isn't a cult, but if it is, it's the most relaxing one you've ever seen. Historians still argue whether these uniform eating rhythms were about discipline, devotion, or digestion. One theory claims the pattern matched liturgical cadences, literally they ate in time with sacred chant. Another insists it was just so the cook didn't feel bad when people scraped the bowl too loudly. You glance around and realize each spoon leaves a distinct shape in the porridge. Some sisters take pride in this. Artistic ripples, tiny whirlpools, even delicate heart shapes. Spoon calligraphy. A fringe tidbit from the 14th century Belgian abbey records an annual contest, Best Decorative Spoon Swirl in Custard. The winner reportedly earned an extra quince. Wild times. After breakfast, you're swept into a different rhythm altogether. Chores. Laundry today. You haul buckets, you scrub, you wring out linen like it's your penance. And yes, your spoon is with you, in your apron pocket, jingling softly. Why? Because spoons weren't just for meals. In many convents, they were tools of trade. Stirring salves, measuring powders, carving shallow grooves into drying wax tablets. Your spoon might have once mixed a tincture of wormwood and honey to soothe a novice's cough. Or pressed dried violets into communion wafers for a springtime feast. You trail Sister Ludwina, who seems to be the local expert in natural dyes. She teaches you to crush elderberries into a rich violet paste perfect for both fabrics and gums, she says, grinning with purple-stained teeth. You stir the mixture with your spoon, which now looks like it's been involved in a crime. Later, tucked beneath the eaves of the herbarium, you find a scroll labeled Cochlearum Usus, the uses of spoons. It's divided by season, task, and temperament. Summer spoons are longer. Winter spoons are flatter. Spoons for the melancholic are weighted toward the handle, for the sanguine tiny cups at the tip to remind them not to take more than needed. It's equal parts practical and poetic, which feels about right for this place. One of the strangest entries, though, reads, "Night spoons must never be pointed." Why no explanation? Just danger to dreams. Scholars remain baffled. You stroll through the courtyard garden, spoon now tucked into your sleeve like the others. It taps gently against your wrist as you walk. This place is rhythmic like that, ceremonial but not stiff. Repetitive but never dull. Soothing in a way that makes you forget time exists. And then comes the bell. Not the prayer bell, the special bell. You notice how the sisters freeze mid-task. Some smile, others roll their eyes. Sister Ludwina mutters, "Oh no, spoon trials." You're ushered to the west lawn where a curious setup awaits. 2 benches, a jug of milk, 3 eggs, a bowl of flour, and an impressive array of spoons. This apparently is recreational alchemy. Turns out convents needed entertainment too. And for some, spoon games filled the niche. Egg balancing spoon relays, and a favorite called silent custard, in which the goal is to stir pudding without making a single sound. If you fail, you must recite a psalm in Latin backwards. You compete, you lose, twice. But Sister Camilla laughs and you're starting to think that's worth the public humiliation. Besides, everyone else's spoons clanked louder. In one corner of the garden stands a wooden pole with dozens of carved spoons hanging from it. Each one marked with initials, dates, and sometimes little images, bees' clouds, even a fish or two. It's a totem of sorts. A history not just of who lived here, but How they stirred, scooped, and remembered? A literal family tree with curved branches. Quirky bit of trivia: one German convent in the 1200s began every year with a spoon swap ceremony. You'd trade spoons with another sister, and whoever received the spoon shaped like a snake had to say the night prayers for everyone that week. Scholars still debate if this was punishment or privilege. As the sun dips low and the shadows stretch long over the cloisters, you head back toward the kitchen. Your spoon now cleaned, polished, and oddly dear to you. You're not sure when it happened, but it's no longer just a spoon. It's a badge, a secret handshake, a comfort. And somewhere in the distance, another bell tolls. You pause, hand on your spoon, and smile. This isn't just a place. It's a rhythm. You dream that night in carved wooden pews lulled by Gregorian chants and a faint scent of cinnamon. Except you're not dreaming. You've dozed off during Compline, the final prayer service of the day, and someone kindly placed your spoon beside you on the bench like a bookmark for your body. When you open your eyes, most of the sisters have already slipped away in pairs of whispering habits and slippered feet. The candles flicker as though they're stifling yawns. One, oddly shaped like a turnip, is sputtering like it's trying to die dramatically. You rise, stretch, and clutch your spoon without even thinking. It just feels right. Later in your small guest cell, a stone room with a straw mattress, woolen blanket, and a single ceramic bowl of dried apples, you nestle your spoon beneath your head like a talisman. And maybe because you've now spent the day with it, it really does seem to pulse with memory. Every scrape, stir, swirl, it carries a residue of ritual. Here's a fun historical fact to chew on as you stare at the wooden ceiling. Archaeologists have recovered over 400 spoons from medieval monastic sites across Europe. Each varies wildly in design and wear. Some are pewter, some carved from animal horn. A few possibly for show made of mother of pearl inlaid with copper wire. But it's the burial ones that really spark the imagination. In a modest convent graveyard just outside Rouen, archaeologists found a nun interred with her spoon laid directly over her heart. Not beside her, not in her hand, but nestled against her chest like it belonged there. The spoon was iron, lightly rusted, with a scalloped bowl and a tiny star carved on the handle's end. Historians still argue whether the placement signified affection, identity, or afterlife preparation. Was it a mark of kitchen duty, pride, a charm against hunger in the beyond, or simply her most treasured object? No one knows, but they do know this. It wasn't unique. Records from Yorkshire, Prague, and even parts of Sicily mention similar burials. In some, the spoon is bound in ribbon. In others, it's hidden beneath a layer of cloth like a secret. You step out into the cloister garden in the early dawn mist and spot Sister Camilla kneeling beside the lavender beds, planting small bundles of dried herbs beneath the soil. "Memory packets," she murmurs, "to perfume the resurrection." You blink. That's not creepy at all. She smiles gently and offers you a sprig of rosemary. For clarity, she adds, also good with lentils. There's a quiet reverence to this place. Not austere, just precise. Like each act is part of a larger, gentler machinery. Spoons, seeds, sleep, all calibrated for a soft kind of holiness. You follow the path toward the scriptorium where a few nuns are already copying out psalms. One pauses to show you the margin of her parchment. Instead of an angel, she's drawn a spoon with wings. "Flight of the ladle," she whispers conspiratorially. According to a fringe tale passed down in a single footnote of a 14th century cooking manuscript, a nun in Bavaria once claimed her spoon levitated during prayer. Scholars suspect she just dropped it and was too embarrassed to admit it. Still, the legend stuck. And the image winged spoons began to appear in illuminated manuscripts, often tucked beside more serious saints and symbols. By noon, you're back in the kitchen helping Sister Ludwina prepare root vegetable stew. Today's lesson: potato equivalents before potatoes. She hands you parsnips, celeriac, and something she calls a white carrot, with the firmness of a rock. "You'll need your spoon," she says, not joking. There's a rhythm to cutting, boiling, and stirring. You scrape your spoon against the pot's rim and realize the sound matches the distant bell tone almost perfectly. Coincidence? Maybe. Or maybe this whole place is secretly a spoon-tuned orchestra. Once the stew simmers, Sister Junia appears with a stack of old napkins, each embroidered with initials. For the repose meal, she says, "This is new." You help set the long wooden table. Every place has a small wooden bowl, a ceramic cup, and a napkin with unfamiliar initials. When you ask, Junia says, "They're for those who've passed." The repose meal is a ritual supper held monthly during which the nuns eat as if the deceased are present. Not a somber affair, more of a gentle remembrance. You're invited to sit next to an empty chair labeled SRH Sister Rosamond of Hartford, apparently. She liked leeks, someone whispers. Your spoon feels heavier tonight, or maybe just fuller. The meal is quiet, full of meaningful glances and faint smiles. Occasionally, someone lifts their spoon and nods toward the empty seat beside them. It's not spooky, just familiar, like they're still stirring somewhere. By the meal's end, your spoon has scraped through parsnips, honeyed lentils, and a pudding so dense it might actually be bread. You lean back and realize something this entire day has been paced by your spoon. It stirred your meals, measured your dies, carved the edge of a jam tart, and marked your place in the spiritual order. It was part utensil, part compass, part conversation starter. You tuck it under your sleeve again, and as the sun sets in long golden bands across the stone flagstones, you find yourself tapping a soft rhythm against your arm. Spoon, heart, spoon, heart. Tomorrow, you learn, is polishing day. The spoons will shine again. Morning creaks into the convent on wooden joints, slow, creaky, and slightly grumpy about it. You stir from your thin stuffed mattress, your spoon already tucked neatly beneath your pillow, exactly where you left it. It's slightly cool to the touch now, and for some reason it smells faintly of cloves. You'll pretend not to notice. Breakfast is barley porridge again, which isn't thrilling, but your spoon does the job. Sister Elodia stirs hers 13 times clockwise before eating, claiming it keeps dreams from following you into daylight. You take no chances. 14 turns it is. After the meal, the entire convent is summoned to the orchard, a crooked grove of apple and quince trees ringed by low stone walls and faint moss graffiti. You're not sure why everyone is gathering until Sister Dorothea stands up, clears her throat, and solemnly announces it's Spoon Harvest Day. You don't question it, you just go with it. Turns out every year around midsummer, the sisters collect naturally fallen tree branches, sticks, or twisted roots from the orchard to carve the next year's communal spoon stock. The belief is that spoons made from willing wood fallen naturally contain a gentler spirit. Carving from live wood is considered, well, rude, possibly cursed. You are handed a basket and told to listen for the ones that hum. This is not a joke. Sister Agnes claims she once found a spoon-shaped root that buzzed like a sleepy bee when picked up. That one became our anointing ladle, she says, very soothing. While you search, you learn more about these spoon rituals. In some convents, there was even a formal spoon mistress, an elected role who oversaw selection, carving, polishing, and spiritual attunement. It's rumored she also settled spoon disputes, which apparently could get heated. One record from an Italian abbey recounts two nuns dueling with pewter ladles over stew seasoning. Both were fined a week of silence and reassigned to candle making. Historians still argue whether spoon mistress was a real title or just a local joke that stuck. Some treat the documents as tongue-in-cheek annotations. Others think it's a serious nod to early object-based mysticism where tools held divine echoes. Meanwhile, back in the orchard, you find your branch. It's smooth, slightly spiraled, and oddly spoon-shaped already. You give it a gentle shake. Nothing hums, but something about it feels agreeable, like a small woodland creature whispering, "Yes, this'll do." After gathering, everyone files back into the woodshop, a cozy little outbuilding that smells like cedar shavings and beeswax. Sister Hildegard, who could carve a teaspoon from a toothpick, blindfolded supervises. She offers gentle guidance and exactly zero compliments. You scrape away, bark, curve the handle, shape the bowl, and try not to cut your thumb. The work is meditative, like slow breathing with your hands. There's a legend passed around while you carve about a nun who once carved a spoon so perfectly balanced that it could stand upright on its bowl. Naturally, it was stolen by a passing bishop who claimed it vibrated with heaven's alignment. The sisters say that spoon eventually reappeared centuries later in a museum mislabeled as a ritual bird-feeding utensil. Honestly, wouldn't be surprised. You finally finish your spoon, it's not perfect. There's a nick near the handle, but it fits in your hand like it's always belonged there. You rub it with oil, set it on the drying rack, and exhale. Behind you, Sister Justina hums a tune while polishing a spoon carved in the shape of a swan's neck. The most peculiar part, each spoon receives a name. Yours gets dubbed Martha for no particular reason. Sister Hildegard just shrugs and says, "She looks like a Martha." Everyone nods. A fringe tradition from the Swiss Alps involved naming cutlery after saints: Saint Olive for salad forks, Saint Basil for soup ladles. Some even believe naming an item helps it function better, as if calling it by name wakes up its purpose. It's like spoon feng shui but holier. As evening returns, the sisters hold a quiet blessing ceremony. The new spoons are arranged on the chapel floor in a spiral, each one touched with a drop of lavender oil and a whispered Latin phrase that translates to something like, "May your service be simple and your curves gentle." It's weirdly touching. You kneel beside your spoon, Martha, and feel a strange surge of loyalty. It's just wood, you tell yourself. But is it really? Before lights out, Sister Magda gives a quiet talk in the refectory. She speaks of spoons as silent companions, helpers in work and prayer in rest. How the act of holding, stirring, or simply touching them connects the body to rhythm and rhythm to rest. A spoon, she says, is a prayer you hold in your palm. You blink. That might be the sleepiest, most profound thing you've heard all week. And as you tuck into bed, your new spoon resting beside your pillow, the convent sighs into night. Crickets chirp. The last candle flickers out. And just as your eyes begin to close, you could swear you really could that Martha gives the faintest hum. Morning comes with the sound of soft bells and the smell of slightly burned oatcakes, which Sister Emilia insists are intentional browning. You shuffle into the chapel, still carrying Martha, your newly carved, probably sentient spoon, in the sleeve of your habit, because no one wants their spiritual eating implement stolen by a squirrel or a jealous novice. Today's task: inventorying the spoon cabinet. Yes, it's exactly what it sounds like. At the far end of the scriptorium, behind a curtain that smells like lavender and cautious secrets, stands a walnut cabinet, carved with vine patterns and saintly faces, each with lips slightly parted, as if mid-sermon or mid-spoon-related complaint. The spoon cabinet is divided into 4 sections: everyday spoons, ceremonial spoons, misfit spoons, also called the awkward drawer, and relic spoons, which are kept under a faintly glowing beeswax seal. Sister Ambrosia, who oversees this ritual, hands you a ledger the size of a small pillow and a quill that has definitely seen better centuries. Each spoon has a name, she tells you, and a reason. You begin. First entry: Anselma, a spoon used in funerary rice porridge for 3 abbesses in a row. She's slightly chipped, stained a permanent shade of thyme green, and radiates the faint smell of cloves and candle wax. Second entry: Brunhilde, a pewter spoon with the faint outline of a dragon on the handle. Allegedly used only during stories about St. Margaret and her showdown with Satan, disguised as a lizard. Historians still argue whether that detail comes from scripture or a German folk puppet play. Third entry: Gertrude, a fork. No one knows how she got in here, but she's been voted most likely to cause a ruckus 4 years running. Sister Ambrosia places her back with a sigh, muttering, "We'll sort you later, dear." As you continue, the stories become stranger. One spoon made of glass was used to collect dew during spring equinoxes for years until it mysteriously melted under a harvest moon. No one speaks of it directly, but its outline remains faint and ghost-like in the velvet-lined relic drawer. Another spoon has a curved hook at the end and was used to ladle honey directly from hives. Its original carver left behind no name, only the phrase, "Do not wake the bees." This is when you notice something truly odd. Tucked behind the relic drawer is a parchment folded into the shape of yes, a spoon. Inside, a set of tiny scribbles reads like a riddle, "To the sister who dreams of stone, dig beneath the winter basin." It's unsigned. Sister Ambrosia, peering over your shoulder, squints and says, "Oh, that old thing. Likely just a devotional prank." We had a nun once who swore she found instructions from Saint Zita on how to fold soup. You try not to laugh, you fail. And yet the idea sticks in your mind's stone dream basin. Could it be referring to the monastery wash house, that ancient slab of limestone basin that collects rainwater for washing hands, feet, and sometimes stubborn vegetables? Your curiosity grows, but the day presses on. Lunch is lentils with garlic, and every nun uses her assigned spoon. Yours. Martha scoops with gentle grace. No spills. No judgment. At least one sister compliments your posture while eating, and you beam like a schoolchild. Later that afternoon, you're sent to assist in the herbarium, where the spoon theme continues. Apparently, each tincture jar has a matching spoon labeled for dosage, coughs, dreams, digestion, and one simply marked pestilence. It's bright yellow. Nobody touches it. Here you meet Sister Winifred, who believes spoons are connected to memory. Each bowl holds echoes, she says, tapping her forehead. What you eat with you remember through. She shares an old belief that some spoons, especially those used during moments of prayer, grief, or deep silence, begin to absorb fragments of the soul. Not dangerously, of course. Just gently, lovingly, like catching the smell of your mother's kitchen in a lump of old clay. That's why we're buried with them, she adds, so we're never completely alone under the earth. You blink. Suddenly, this all feels much bigger than porridge. Historians still argue whether burial with spoons was symbolic, practical, or simply convenient, something to place in folded hands when nothing else fit the budget. There are records of noble women buried with entire dining sets, while others had only a single chipped wooden scoop tucked into their shroud. Some archaeologists propose it was an echo of ancient Egyptian burial customs, where utensils symbolize nourishment for the journey beyond. But back here in this quiet monastery, where bees hover lazily over thyme bushes and clouds roll like whispered secrets, the spoon is more than utility. It's memory, ritual, connection. That evening, under the guise of fetching herbs, you sneak to the old winter basin behind the cloister. You crouch beside the lichen-stained stone. Nothing hums, no glowing symbols. But tucked just beneath the rim is a faint engraving, worn but unmistakable, a spoon. You reach under and feel something cool, flat and stubbornly stuck. You pull, a click, a shift, and suddenly the basin tilts ever so slightly, revealing a hollow beneath it, dry, surprisingly deep, and lined with smooth river stones. Inside, a spoon, made of stone, perfectly polished, heavy but not crude. Balanced like a sculptor's dream. No ornamentation, just the raw, clean arc of ancient craftsmanship. Your breath catches. You don't know what it means. You don't know who placed it there. But in that moment, with dusk melting around you and the convent bell ringing in the distance, you feel like you've touched something that doesn't need to explain itself. Somehow Martha feels pleased. You carry the stone spoon back in the crook of your sleeve like it's made of starlight and secrets, though in truth it weighs about as much as a modest loaf of rye. It's cool against your forearm, grounded and still, as if it doesn't mind being forgotten for another century or two. Martha, sensing she has competition, gives off a faint vibe of jealous silence. She needn't worry. The newcomer, who you decide to name Petronilla, for reasons unclear even to yourself, feels less like a replacement and more like a monument. Back in the scriptorium, you return to the spoon cabinet. No one is around. The curtain flutters faintly with the motion of the wind or some unseen sigh. You slide open the relic drawer and place Petronilla beside the ghost glass spoon. They don't clash. They don't glow. They simply coexist, as if they've always meant to. Maybe they have. Maybe every spoon is just waiting to be found again. You leave without a word, the ledger tucked under your arm, and Martha once more your dining companion. The next few days unfold in a soothing blur. The rhythm of monastic life settles over you like a warm quilt. Morning bells, candle-lit prayers, small scandals involving beetroot jam and misplaced prayer beads. You help Sister Apollonia with wax sealing, where spoons are pressed into hot wax to create marks of authenticity on scrolls. You did not expect spoons to have sigils. You were wrong. Apparently, one spoon was used to sign letters between the abbey and a certain duke whose handwriting suggests either deep reverence or severe arthritis. You learn that the word for spoon in several medieval dialects ranges from cochlearia to colispai, depending on which part of England or France you're praying in. One Flemish nun used to call her spoon the quiet ladle. She also believed fish could communicate divine judgment through spoon vibrations. Historians still argue whether this belief was personal eccentricity or part of a now-lost sect. In the kitchen, Martha becomes more than a tool, she becomes a topic. Other nuns begin whispering about your carved spoon. She's got a nose for time, one says. Look how her handle curls just so, says another. You catch Sister Lorette sketching her likeness in the margins of a psalter. And then Sister Marjorie invites you to join the night watch, not for security, not for discipline, for dreaming. It's a little-known rite practiced by a select few in the convent, a quiet rotation of sisters who keep vigil in the chapel overnight, each assigned a relic spoon to hold during silent meditation. The idea, according to the rite's hazy origins, is that the spoon anchors you to memory while your thoughts wander gently through sleep's door. You, of course, bring Martha. The chapel is lit with one candle and 1,000 shadows. You kneel on a cushion that once belonged to a mystic who claimed to speak fluent goose. You don't question it. You simply settle in. The hour passes in absolute stillness. No one snores, no one shifts. Only the soft creak of the roof beams and the occasional flutter of a bat somewhere above the rafters. You hold Martha in your palms and listen to your breath, to the hush, to whatever might hum through the wood grain and the stone walls. It's during this vigil that your mind drifts not into dreams but into visions of earlier centuries, of other hands holding spoons, of someone scooping lentils by a riverside, of another carving spirals into a handle while wind tugs at her veil. These aren't memories, they aren't even yours, but they feel inherited. And there's a whisper of laughter, not cruel, not mocking, just old, like the sound of a story remembering itself. When the bell finally tolls to end the vigil, you rise slowly. Martha feels warmer now, or maybe your hands are just cold. Either way, something has shifted. The next day, you visit the small burial yard behind the convent wall. Here lie the sisters who've passed their graves marked not with grand statues, but with wooden spoons embedded gently into the soil above each headstone. Some are worn smooth by rain. Others still bear carved names, ale-red Beatrice Flora with the pepper fingers. No crosses, no marble, just the mark of nourishment both given and received. It's peaceful. Wind murmurs through tall grass. You kneel before a particularly old grave with a spoon so weathered it barely resembles its original shape. A small plaque reads, "She stirred quietly and often." You laugh softly, then feel slightly bad about laughing, but only slightly. Later that afternoon, you speak with Sister Regina, the convent's unofficial historian and fully certified tea hoarder. Over a pot of nettle and lavender brew, you ask why spoons were chosen for burial in the first place. She leans back, eyes crinkling. "Well, love," she says, "you can't bury someone with bread. It goes stale. You can't bury them with soup. It leaks. But a spoon. A spoon says she fed others. She nourished. She remembered things. She was useful and gentle, and probably had excellent wrist control. Then she adds more quietly, and some say after we pass, we use them to stir the stars. You blink. That night you dream of a vast kitchen under the night sky with constellations bubbling in enormous cauldrons, and a line of sisters stirring galaxies with spoons of every kind, wooden, stone, silver, bone. Martha glows faintly. Petronilla, the stone one, sleeps, and somewhere a ghostly fish offers judgment through spoon vibrations again. You are not entirely convinced this isn't real. The next morning you wake with a spoon print on your cheek and a slightly existential feeling in your chest. Not dread, not confusion, just the soft, ticklish sensation that the universe might be held together by humble things like string prayer and kitchenware. Your day begins with a task both dull and oddly thrilling. Inventorying the convent's lost and found. It's a wooden chest in the back of the cloister pantry labeled simply, "If the Holy Spirit doesn't claim it, you can." Inside, you find one sandal, right foot, 3 different combs with a single tooth apiece, a feather quill that appears to hum very faintly, and of course a spoon. This one's bronze tarnished to a gorgeous green patina that looks like it's been kissed by centuries. Its handle ends in a tiny serpent curled delicately around itself like it's shy. You hold it up to the light and swear it winks. You nickname her Seraphina, which is probably sacrilegious but deeply satisfying. According to the tiny tag tied around her stem with lamb's wool thread, she was once used in the apothecary by Sister Maud, the Abbey's resident herbalist and part-time lightning translator. You don't ask. Sister Maud, as the story goes, could detect weather changes by stirring crushed mint with Seraphina. If the leaves clung to the bowl of the spoon, a thunderstorm was coming. If they leapt off immediately, it was going to be unseasonably pleasant. If they hissed, stay indoors forever. Historians still argue whether Maud's predictive technique was actual science, pure superstition, or the result of a highly charismatic squirrel she kept in her hood. You decide Seraphina should live on your desk, just in case. That evening, after chores and chant and a very questionable lentil pudding, you return to the scriptorium and dive into the Abbey's spoon registry. It's not just a list, it's an entire binder of parchment entries, sketches, marginal doodles, and extremely polite arguments about whether a certain ivory spoon was actually an ice cream scoop or a misplaced dental tool. Entry No. 112 stands out. It's a hand-drawn image of a flat rectangular spoon with no bowl, just a wide paddle-like surface etched with strange marks. Next to it, a note in spidery ink, used by Sister Evelina to serve sacred syllables. Do not lick. You pause. Sacred syllables you whisper to yourself, which earns you a judgmental cough from somewhere near the hymnals. The more you read, the stranger things get. There are spoons that once held sun-dried rose petals meant to ward off gossip. Spoons used in silent mealtimes as tools of charades, 2 taps for salt, 3 for my turn to stir the communal gruel. One was fashioned from river clay, baked by accident, and declared holy because it didn't shatter when dropped from the bell tower. That one's nicknamed Sister Resilienta. You begin to understand that spoons in this place are not just utensils. They are talismans, memory anchors, soft tools of soft resistance, ways to mark a life too quiet to be recorded in battle songs or tax ledgers. In the margins of one entry, you find this scratched-in phrase, "When your name is forgotten, let your spoon remember." It gives you chills. The following morning, a storm rolls in. Rain splatters the stained glass and thunder mutters over the roof like an annoyed old man in wool socks. The garden path turns to mud and the nuns bustle through the cloisters with baskets of damp laundry and raised eyebrows. You are sent to the storeroom to organize the spoon kits. Apparently, each novice is assigned a small linen roll with their name stitched in red thread. Inside, a wooden spoon for eating, a smaller one for sharing, and a third, usually metal, for ritual purposes. You're told to just nod and not ask about that last one until year 3. While sorting, you find a kit labeled Sister Ludovica Returned. You frown. returned. Sister Marjorie sees your face and gently sets down her jar of pickled walnuts. Ludovica was a wanderer, she says. She left the order for a while, said she needed to find a spoon with her own name on it. Not metaphorically, literally. Did she find it? She found something. Marjorie shrugs, but it wasn't a spoon. Your brain politely files that under to be wondered about at 3 a.m. That night you dream of a spoon in a field, alone upright, planted like a flag in a battlefield where the only casualties are forgotten names and uneaten soup. You wake up certain that somewhere there is a spoon waiting for you. Yours. Carved, worn, ordinary, and perfect. The next few days become a hunt. Not a frantic one. More like a meandering treasure stroll with a touch of gentle obsession. You peek under pew cushions. You check abandoned cloaks. You subtly prod dirt piles like a highly respectful archaeologist with poor impulse control. And then one late afternoon, while polishing the brass lock on the reliquary cabinet, your hand brushes something cool tucked behind the frame. It is a spoon. Stone. Obsidian black, dull edges, but the bowl is smooth like it's been held through lifetimes. The handle, twisted in a gentle spiral, and at the base carved so faintly it almost disappears. Your name. Well, sort of. It's one letter off, but close enough that your heart thuds once loudly. You hold it to your chest. Then, naturally, you whisper, mine. No one hears, except maybe the walls, except maybe Martha, who now sits on your nightstand and glares with passive spoon aggression, except maybe Serafina, who vibrates faintly near the nettle pot, except maybe every other spoon you've passed in the last week watching you with quiet understanding. This is how the obsession begins to bloom, not in fire or lightning, but in the soft certainty that something small and silent knows your name. The convent's library is silent except for the papery shuffle of old dreams and the occasional sigh from a shelf that hasn't been dusted since the Black Death. You sit cross-legged between rows of vellum-bound chronicles and herbals, your newly discovered spoonstone spiral handled namishly. Yours balanced on your knee like a patient cat. You're supposed to be reading a tract on proper posture for cloistered embroidery, but let's be honest, your eyes are fixed on the oldest, dustiest volume in the room. It's titled Instrumenta Humilitatis, on the minor tools of grace. Of course it is. The chapter you flip to of spoons and their ritual placements. You can't help but grin. The book outlines how certain convents, mostly in Flanders, some in France, and a rogue priory in Malta, developed customs involving the placement of spoons during prayer, especially during vigils. The spoon was to rest upside down if the prayer was for others, right side up if the nun secretly hoped to get something out of it herself. A side-laying spoon meant divine indecision, or maybe indigestion. Historians still argue whether these spoon positions were sincere symbolic or just an elaborate form of monastic Morse code. There's even a rumor that a nun once proposed a spoon duel, gently tapping the handles together until one conceded, but this was quickly reclassified as excessively gleeful behavior and discouraged with an extra hour of lentil duty. You imagine it anyway, a standoff at dawn, spoons raised like gleaming sabers. Winner gets the last fig. In the margins of this book, someone, probably Sister Eglantine, judging by the spiky handwriting, has annotated most of the rules with her own commentary. Too strict. What if both sides of the spoon are holy? This is just about soup, isn't it? You like Eglantine already. After chapel that evening, you find yourself wandering the cemetery path behind the chapel, past rows of mossy gravestones bearing names like Scholastica, Ermentrude, and Blanche with the loud lungs. Some stones are plain, others have little carvings at the base, a feather, a book, a tiny loaf of bread. And yes, more than a few have spoons. You kneel at one marked Sister Beatrix the Unstartled. Next to her name is a modest engraving of a soup spoon, its handle broken and lovingly patched with what looks like a depiction of beeswax cord. Legend has it she once continued stirring a broth while lightning struck the roof. Didn't even flinch. Said the lentils still needed 5 minutes. No one knows where her spoon ended up. Some say it dissolved. Others think it was melted into the new bell. A very small minority whispers that it occasionally appears in dreams offering life advice and biscuit recipes. You stay there for a while. The air smells like cold lavender and wet stone. The wind makes the chapel windows hum in a way that feels like humming back. The next day, you're tasked with reorganizing the refectory drawer. A thankless, clattery job. Inside 24 spoons, all seemingly identical, except one. This one is warped not from age but from some quiet defiance of shape. The bowl is shallow, the handle crooked, and someone's carved a spiral on the end in the same style as your own spoon. No name, but you feel a pang of recognition anyway, like finding a cousin in a crowd. You decide to nickname this one Unstartled just for today. Later during mealtime, you sit beside Sister Willa, the convent's unofficial archivist and full-time eavesdropper. Between bites of beetroot mash and something alarmingly called cabbage surprise, she leans in. You've been looking into the spoons. It's not a question. You nod. I found one. I think it's mine. Is it speaking to you yet? You blink. What? Metaphorically, she smirks. Unless you're especially blessed. You laugh. I think it's mostly humming. That's enough, she says, stabbing a cube of carrot like it insulted her. According to Willa, some nuns believed that each person had a spoon already shaped to fit the curve of their soul. Most people never found it. Some did, and when they did, they buried it with them, part companion, part proof they'd stirred the world just enough. She points out that the spoons weren't always literal. Sometimes it's a comb, or a stone, or a story someone told you when your feet were cold. But around here it's usually a spoon, probably because they're small enough to tuck into sleeves and hearts. And then she adds very casually, of course not all the graves have spoons, some are missing. You tilt your head. Stolen. No. Chosen. You don't sleep much that night. Your stone spoon sits in the sill beside a cup of rose water and a biscuit you've forgotten to eat. You think about all the things you've stirred lately. Thoughts, the wind, the memory of Beatrix unstartled, the possibility that your spoon isn't the end of a mystery but the beginning of one. Morning breaks without much enthusiasm. The convent rooster forgets his cue. The sky shows up late. And the porridge is unusually contemplative. You eat it slowly, wondering if it's secretly judging you. Your spoon sits in your apron pocket like a quiet idea you're still figuring out how to believe in. Today's assignment: garden duty. You're handed a trowel, a sack of marigold roots, and a vague warning to mind the snails they've unionized. As you kneel beside a row of half-hearted cabbages, Sister Eglantine shuffles over. Yes, that Eglantine, the one with the spiky handwriting and the apparent disdain for spoon decorum. She's older than half the stained glass and twice as sharp. Her face has the same folded paper creases as the convent's map of France, and she's humming a song that might be in Latin or possibly just about potatoes. You've seen the grave spoon, she says, brushing dirt from her knees. You nod, unsure whether this is a test, an invitation, or just one of those weird old nun icebreakers. Eglantine reaches into her sleeve and pulls out a spoon. Not stone this time, wood, whittled smooth with a notch in the middle of the handle like someone chewed it in thought. This one belonged to Sister Maron, she says, handing it over. You cradle it gently. It smells like thyme and lavender oil. She never stirred soup with it. She used it to tap the edge of her chair. All day. Every day, said. It kept the rhythm of her prayers steady. You raise your eyebrows. Did it work? No idea. But she never missed a line. You smile and hand it back, but Eglantine stops you. Keep it for a bit. Spoons like to visit. You tuck Maron's spoon into your apron beside your own. They don't clink. They rest. Later, you wander through the chapel during midday silence. The air is cool, full of old echoes and the faint scent of beeswax polish. You run your fingers along the pews, one step behind the memories that still sit there. On the altar just below the embroidered cloth is a locked drawer. Nobody talks about it, which means everyone knows it's important. Willa catches you eyeing it that evening. She's slicing boiled eggs, like each one is a confession. That drawer, you begin. She doesn't look up. It's where they keep the forgotten spoons. Afmai? Yes, that's a real category. Oh yes, she says, sliding a yolk into her mouth. Spoons with no nuns. Found in walls, floorboards, laundry baskets. Some say they belong to novices who left, or nuns whose names were erased, or visitors who stirred too well and stayed too long. You imagine it a drawer full of quietly humming mismatched utensils waiting for someone to remember them. Later you ask the abbess about it directly. She's not as terrifying as everyone claims unless you make the mistake of mentioning raisins. She listens, then says, "Some spoons arrive before their owners. Some remain after. Not everything is meant to be understood, but everything can be carried." Then she adds, "And if you ever do open that drawer, take a biscuit with you. They like crumbs." 1 week passes. You get used to the weight of the 2 spoons in your pocket. Your own and Maron's. Sometimes during long hours of weeding or hymn copying, you tap their handles together gently. The rhythm is inconsistent. You like it that way. Eglantine says she once met a spoon that only responded to sea shanties. Then one gray afternoon, a courier arrives. Not a dramatic one, just a tired-looking man with a scroll and a biscuit-shaped stain on his cloak. He hands the message to the abbess and vanishes. The scroll is from a nearby convent. They're requesting help cataloging the belongings of a recently passed nun, Sister Dorothea. Apparently, her will is more of a scavenger hunt. The abbess reads it, sighs, and points at you. "Take your spoons," she says. "Looks like someone left something for you." You don't ask how she knows. You just pack bread, a candle stub, and a third spoon because by now it's tradition. The borrowed donkey smells like celery and regret. The road is muddy, the sky stubborn, and the hills you cross whisper things like, "Are you sure you brought enough socks?" You arrive 2 days later. The convent is smaller, quieter. It smells like fennel and ink. A nun greets you at the gate with a tired smile and a question, "Are you the one for the spoon?" Apparently so. She leads you to a small stone room with 3 objects, a book, a box, and a spoon. The spoon is metal bronze maybe, heavy, dented, and on the handle your name. Or rather the name you took at your vows. No one knew that here. Inside the box a note. "You'll know when you've stirred enough." You sit down holding the spoon in both hands. There's a hum, of course. But this time it sounds a little like music. You don't sleep much that night, not because you're uncomfortable, but because the air itself feels heavy with questions. The kind of night where you lie in a convent guest bed under a quilt that smells like rosemary, listening to every creak of the walls and wondering whether the spoon is still humming or you've just developed spoon-shaped tinnitus. At breakfast, you're served barley porridge again. It's as if oats are banned in this region. You swirl it absently, the bronze spoon resting beside your bowl like it's judging your technique. You glance around, but no one else seems to notice your name carved into it. Or if they do, they pretend not to. That's how convent politics usually work. Ignore the miracles, but gossip about the laundry rotations. A novice in her first year, barely 16, and already fluent in dramatic sighs asks, "Do you think the spoon was meant for you?" You shrug and whisper, "Maybe I was meant for it." The abbess of this smaller convent, a stout woman named Sister Bertrada, with a laugh like a hiccuping goat, takes you on a tour of their archives. You nod politely through shelf after shelf of handwritten records, wax-sealed letters, and herbs that long ago gave up trying to smell like anything but dust. She stops before a tiny drawer built into the base of an old reliquary cabinet. No lock, just a crescent moon carved into the handle. She opens it with a wink. Inside spoons? Again? Of course. But these are smaller, miniature even, child-sized. Some carved, others molded, a few wrapped in woolen scraps. These, she says, were given to us by an orphanage. Once children here would each receive a spoon when they arrived, meant to teach them care. And if they left, it stayed behind. It was our way of remembering them. You pick one up, it's light bone white carved from antler. A flower etched into the handle. She adds softly, "Historians still argue whether the practice was symbolic or just a clever way to reduce missing cutlery." Later, you sit in the garden with Willa, who somehow found you again. She's tying herbs into little bundles while muttering something about a ghost who insists the time be symmetrical. You tell her about the child-sized spoons. She nods. There's a legend, she says, that one saint refused to be buried without the spoon she used to mix ink. You blink. Ink. She was a scribe. Said the ink smelled like heaven. Claimed it wasn't the words but the stirring that made her holy. You laugh. Did the church canonize her? Officially, no. But she's the patron saint of blots. You walk through the convent graveyard that evening. The bronze spoon still tucked into your apron, heavier than usual. Maybe it's the weight of meaning, or just a poor casting job. Either way, it keeps pulling you toward the older part of the grounds. There's a weathered stone near the hedgerow, so old the name's worn off. But in the soft earth before it, you find a shallow depression. Not a full grave, not a hole, more like a resting place. You kneel beside it and press your palm into the soil. It's warm, like someone left the sun there for safekeeping. And then you hear it. Or feel it. A quiet tap. 1, 2, pause. 3. It doesn't repeat. You don't explain it. You just acknowledge it and move on. That night you dream of a long wooden table. At it sit dozens of nuns, young and old. Their faces peaceful, their hands curled around spoons. They don't eat, they stir, all in different rhythms. A song made of clinks, swishes, and soft knocks. No words, no mouths moving, just the sound of a story being passed from hand to hand. You wake just before dawn, the bronze spoon still in your fist. By midday, you're packed and ready to return. Before you leave, Sister Bertrada hands you a small cloth pouch. It's for the drawer, she says. We heard it hum last night. Inside a thimble, a button, and the tiniest wooden spoon you've ever seen. The size of a fingertip. No note. Just trust. You ride back with the wind behind you and a donkey who now responds to the name Parsley. When you reach your own convent, the sun's already setting. You don't go to the chapel right away. Instead, you walk the garden, touch the walls, sit beside the same cabbage bed you started with. And then when the stars appear, you go inside. The altar drawer creaks open without resistance. You place the pouch inside. Then for the first time, you add your own spoon. Not the bronze one, yours. The one you were given on your first day. You whisper, "Thank you," and close the drawer. You still carry the bronze spoon, of course. Some things stay with you longer than they should, or maybe exactly as long as they must. The days that follow are calm. Too calm. The kind of calm that feels like someone upstairs has paused the game to answer a long-distance prayer. You return to your regular duties, herb sorting, candle dipping, parchment scraping. No more mysterious visitors. No more humming drawers. No unexpected spoons appearing where spoons should not be. Except one. The bronze one still sits on your desk. Every morning you tell yourself you'll return it. Every night you forget. Or pretend to. One chilly morning, as frost teases the cabbage leaves, you're summoned by Sister Constanza, your favorite grump, all eyebrows and rules. She hands you a letter sealed in red wax shaped like a pelican. It's from the chapter house, she says. You've been invited to give a talk on spoon theology. You blink. That's a thing now. She raises one brow. Apparently it's having a moment. The chapter house is a day's walk and 2 awkward donkey rides away. You arrive smelling like rosemary, which is better than most nuns can say after travel. The lecture hall is half full, mostly with scribes, minor abbots, and one nun knitting furiously through the opening prayer. You take the podium palm's clammy voice, scratchy from the dry air. You begin. There's a drawer in our altar, and in it, someone sneezes. You adjust your veil, and in it there are spoons, not for eating, not even for cooking. They are spoons of presence, of persistence. You tell the story, not just your own. You mention Willa, the reliquary drawer, the humming sound, the grave with no name. You quote the inky saint with her blotty theology. You make a joke about how the devil probably prefers forks, he's always stabbing things. The crowd laughs, gently. You finish with, "We're not here to explain why, we're here to remember who. These spoons weren't lost, they were left." There's silence. Then a polite smattering of applause followed by a flurry of parchment scratching as the scribes rush to record your phrasing before they forget it. Later, over watered wine and brittle biscuits, a monk named Theophilus approaches you. "I'm from the convent in Belay," he says. We've had objects too, not just spoons, buttons, pins, one time an entire wooden fork. You nod. He lowers his voice. We think they come from a place we haven't mapped, a spiritual drawer, one that opens into all others. You try not to choke on your biscuit. Historians still argue whether the phenomena are local hauntings, group delusion, or divine inbox overflow, he adds casually, sipping from his clay cup. You like Theophilus immediately. That night you stay in the chapter house guest wing. The mattress is stuffed with moss and gives you dreams so vivid they feel embroidered onto your brain. You wake with an image, a spiral staircase made entirely of spoons, each one bearing a name etched in a language you don't recognize but somehow understand. Back home, life returns to its usual rhythm, until a month later when Willa sends a message. A note on rough parchment tucked into a basket of dried thyme carried by a merchant who insists he found it humming. The note reads, "It's happening again, bring parsley, and your spoon." No signature. You go, of course. By now, the donkey no longer argues. This time Willa greets you with a smile and a list of names. She points to the altar drawer now expanded physically somehow. It has 4 compartments. Inside 12 new spoons, so? One vibrates, another glows faintly. A third has what looks like teeth marks. They're appearing faster now, she says. One nun had a dream about a spoon stirring the stars. She woke up holding this. She shows you a tarnished ladle carved with constellations. You raise a brow. Do you think it's spreading? She shrugs. Do you think bread rises on its own? You're not sure what that means, but it sounds wise. That afternoon, you join the other nuns in a quiet ritual. No singing, no incense. Just the placing of spoons gently, reverently into the drawer. Each spoon gets a whisper, a name, a memory. One novice says for the sister who laughed like rain. Another, for the one who hid cookies in her sleeves. Yours is simple, for the woman who stirred ink like a prayer. Later by the fire, Willa leans close. They say spoons carry intention, she whispers. That you stir something long enough it remembers you. You stare into the flames, fingers curled around your own bronze spoon. Maybe she's right. Maybe the drawer isn't just for the past. Maybe it's for keeping things until we're ready to remember. You return home with a different sense of time now. Not the hours of prayer or the days marked by feast and fast, but something slower, spoon time. The time it takes to steep memory into metal. The kind of time that doesn't tick but hums. The bronze spoon stays close. You wear it tucked inside your robe tied with a red thread that Willa gave you, claiming it was once part of a saint's apron. Or maybe just a butcher's towel, she added with a wink. Either way, it's seen things. The other sisters begin noticing. One day, Sister Agnes finds a pewter spoon under her pillow. Another discovers a tiny copper one in her sock drawer, embossed with a flower she insists only blooms in her dreams. Soon, there's no pretending it's just coincidence. You and Willa start corresponding regularly coded letters, tucked into herb bundles. Messages baked into loaves of black bread, a whole conversation once carved into carrot sticks. You had to read it fast. Willa writes of a vision. A spoon tree blooming in a courtyard, its branches hung with memories and laughter, its roots tangled in stories too old to tell. You write back, if I ever dig up a root ladle, I'm quitting. But secretly, you start checking beneath the garden time, just in case. One rainy week, you notice a shift. The drawer doesn't hum anymore, it breathes. Not audibly, but you can feel it. A faint give and take, like it's dreaming with you. Some days you find a new spoon beside your bed etched with initials no one claims. Other days, nothing but the scent of lavender in the chapel feels warmer, closer, like a memory that's moved in. Then it happens. Sister Constanza. Yes, grumpy schedule-loving. Constanza enters morning prayers, holding a wooden spoon carved with hearts and stars. I dreamed my sister visited, she says flatly. She's been gone 20 years. Everyone waits for her to scoff. She doesn't. She said she was cold. I wrapped her in my apron. Then she handed me this. She places the spoon on the altar without another word. You all sit in silence. For once, Constanza doesn't time the silence or tell anyone when it's over. The weeks turn. The drawer is full again. 16 spoons now and one spork that no one wants to claim. Historians would have a field day if you let them. But you don't. Because they'd measure things. They'd poke. They'd catalog. They'd write cold footnoted paragraphs with phrases like ritual object and localized psychospiritual resonance. Willa once tried to explain that to a visiting bishop. He nodded, then asked if the spoons could be melted down for communion chalices. She told him the last man who tried that ended up with a cup full of seawater and a very angry oyster. You're pretty sure she made that up, but honestly, maybe not. One evening while oiling the wooden beams of the chapel, you notice a new drawer. Not part of the altar, just there, in the wall, where a brick wasn't before. You open it. Inside, one small iron spoon. Heavier than it looks. Unlabeled, cold, ancient. You show Willa, who shows Theophilus, who consults a visiting Jewish scholar who only says, "Ah, that kind of drawer," which isn't helpful. The drawer vanishes the next morning, but the spoon remains. You place it beside the others. No hum, no glow, just weight and silence. And yet that night every sister dreams of water, of a river flowing backwards, of women stirring stars from clay pots, of a child giggling and clanging spoons against the sky like wind chimes. Even Constanza wakes smiling. That's how you know it's serious. Historians still argue whether these experiences are manifestations of communal grief or joy. Theophilus writes later in a scroll, "Perhaps they are both, perhaps they are neither, or perhaps they are spoons." He wins an award for that line. You send him a spoon wrapped in time as congratulations. He sends back one dipped in honey. Don't lick it, his note warns. Or do. But maybe not in public. You hang it above your bed. Eventually, the chapter house holds a symposium. You and Willa are invited to speak again, this time seated beside monks mystics, and a woman who swears spoons taught her how to read Latin by singing the declensions in different pitches. The consensus, no consensus, but a decision is made. Every abbey and convent is to be issued a spoon drawer. Official, labeled, blessed, empty at first. Because, as one abbot puts it, they always fill. You return home to find yours already humming. Inside, a spoon shaped like a tulip. No one knows why, but it smells faintly of bread, and Sister Agnes insists it winks at her when the sun hits it just right. You don't question it anymore. You just keep placing them one by one. For the ones who stirred and the ones who waited. The seasons shift once more, and with them, the quiet pulse of the spoon drawer continues, never loud, never showy, just there. Like breath, like memory, like some secret rite that pretends not to be sacred but most definitely is. You're older now. Your knees creak when you kneel. You forget the names of some herbs but still remember the way Willa snorted during prayers. The chapel smells the same cedarwood and beeswax lace now with faint metallic sweetness. The drawer hums deeper than it used to, more settled, wiser maybe. One morning after a dream involving Saint Bridget and a very judgmental marmot, you discover a new spoon tucked into your robe pocket. It's made of bone. Not creepy smooth and sanded, worn soft at the edges like it's been loved for centuries. No initials, no markings, just the faint trace of pressed lips on the bowl. You know it's not yours, but it fits your hand like it was waiting. You carry it all day, unsure whether to place it with the others or keep it. That night, you don't sleep. You sit by the drawer and watch the light shift across the walls. There's no voice. No grand revelation. Just the soft sound of wood stretching. You realize something. This isn't about death or even memory. It's about touch, the passing of weight. The gentlest proof that someone lived, held, stirred, offered. The only theology that's ever made sense to you. By breakfast, the drawer has rearranged itself. Not by magic, just by understanding. The spoons sit in a spiral now, like ripples. At the center is yours. Bone, soft, honest. When you finally lay down later that week, Really lay down for the last time you do so, with the spoon in your hand, not for drama, not for ritual, just because it feels like home. The sisters bury you with it. No inscription, just a napkin. Willa insists on it. She wraps it around the spoon and tucks it into your hand like it's a favor she's returning. Later, when the novices ask why, she just says so she doesn't wake up hungry. The drawer hums a little louder that night. A spoon appears the next day. It's blue, glass, unusable. Everyone agrees it's yours, except it smells like fresh thyme and marmot dreams. They leave it there. The story spreads quietly. Pilgrims start visiting. Some leave offerings, honey poems, wooden ladles. One exceptionally realistic spoon carved from a turnip. Nay, the chapel doesn't become famous. It becomes known, just enough. One evening, years later, Willa kneels alone, her fingers trailing along the edge of the drawer. She doesn't expect anything, but the wood warms under her touch. Inside, a thimble-sized spoon made of rose gold. On the handle, someone has etched for the dreamers who stir gently. She places it beside yours, doesn't say a word. But as she walks away, the drawer shifts again. A small click, a breath, and you're sure of it wherever you are. She smiled. And now, dear listener, we slow. The chapel fades into soft candlelight. The drawer hums a lullaby just beneath the silence. The spoons do not clatter, they breathe suspended in hush. You walk slower, now barefoot across polished stone, feeling each moment pass underfoot like ripples in warm water. Someone lights a lamp in the distant apse. Someone folds linen napkins in the kitchen. Someone, maybe you, leaves a spoon under someone else's pillow just in case. You listen, and the drawer listens back. It always has. And now let your breath slow. The sisters are resting. The chapel is closed. The drawer is quiet but not empty. It hums with every memory gently stirred. Every warm broth passed between friends. Every moment you forgot you needed something soft to hold. Outside, the air is thick with the scent of thyme and ash. The stone paths cool under the moonlight, and somewhere in the garden, a marmot, real or imagined, scuffles through leaves in search of a midnight snack. You are no longer holding the spoon. It's resting beside you where it's always been, even before you knew it. No rush, no rules, no one keeping time with bells or sand or old monastic charts. Just you, the hush of the drawer, and the faint promise that somewhere a spoon is waiting to be remembered. You drift now not away but deeper, into the folds of something older than theology, older than story. A kindness passed from hand to hand. And whether it's wood, bone, copper, or glass, your story lingers in the curve of it. Not grand, not loud, just true. Sleep now with the drawer slightly open. Let the silence stir. Let it hum. Let it hold you.